Thursday night football review, 49ers and Seahawks. 49ers win their third straight in Seattle, 3 straight primetime games with 49er wins in Seattle. Never thought I would say that, but it's something to celebrate. It wasn't the prettiest of games, and I feel like I've said that many times about the 49ers this season with their victories, that anytime you get a win in Seattle, and a fairly convincing win, 36-24, which could have been much higher. I mean, they should have put up 41, if not more than that. You'll just be thankful. Be thankful to win in Seattle and take care of your business. It really was a must-win game for them. Why? And I know we're all tired of hearing about must-win, because you're facing the Chiefs next. You have a game against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are coming off a bye next Sunday, and they're almost impossible to beat in those situations, and the 49ers just can't beat the Chiefs, so you had to get this one. The Seahawks started off 3-0. Now they've lost 3 straight. So they want this one too. It was a home game. It was a divisional game, prime time game. And the main thing for the 49ers was the big time players showed up. On offense, Brock Purdy, 18 of 28, 255 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I admit I was too hard on Purdy after the last game. If you really go back and look at the turnovers, they really weren't on him. I mean, one was a deflected pass, another was his arm getting hit. And maybe you could say against the Cardinals it was he should have been more aware of that free blitzer, but he came to play, and he's played so well in Seattle. He's 3-0 in Seattle in these primetime games. 18 for 28, 255, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Jordan Mason, he had to leave the game, but he was rolling. 9 carries, 73 yards, 8.1 average. He had the 38-yard run. I mean, you could almost call it a mini Beastquake run that he had. Isaac Guerendo put the game away with his 76-yard run. We didn't see that coming. He had 99 yards, by far the most of his career. When Mason went out, it was up to Guerendo, and Patrick Taylor had some action. Deebo Samuel had some handoffs. And Kyle Juszczyk had the 6-yard touchdown run. But we talk about the big players on offense. Purdy, Mason until the injury, and Deebo Samuel, he's faced a lot of criticism, and rightfully so. But Deebo, 3 receptions, 102 yards. He had the 76-yard touchdown reception. Statement play. George Kittle, not a huge game, but 5 receptions, 58 yards, and 2 touchdowns. 2 big touchdowns for Kittle. He's had big games up in Seattle, and now he's more of the featured red zone target, and he should be. He's never really been featured and used in the red zone like he should be, and they've started to do that more without McCaffrey. And speaking of McCaffrey, I don't really have any expectation of him coming back. But for me, I think Mason is every bit as fast, if not faster than McCaffrey. It's like, do people watch the games? McCaffrey is not a breakaway runner always. I mean, he can, but speed, just sheer speed, isn't necessarily his game. It's the full package. Yes, he can run, but it's the vision, it's ability to break tackles. He's got that. It's even toughness with McCaffrey. You get an underrated toughness that people don't give him credit for. And being a receiver, especially third downs, third short, red zone, goal line, he brings so much. But now the other running backs, the young running backs are really going to have to step up, and we don't know about Jordan Mason's availability going to the game against Kansas City. And then defensively, what do we have? We had big games from Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. Fred Warner, 11 tackles. He had a play that could have possibly been intercepted. Another forced fumble. After this game, and yes, it was the first game of the week, he was right there at the top of the league in forced fumbles as a middle linebacker. We're not talking about a defensive end who's always going after the quarterback or attacking the quarterback's blind side. We're talking about a middle linebacker leading the league in forced fumbles. Fred is getting better. Nick Bosa, don't let the box score fool you. Box score, I love box scores, I love stats, but they don't tell you everything. Sometimes you really do have to watch the game. And Bosa was so disruptive. He was constantly pressuring Geno Smith. He didn't register any sacks. He only had officially 2 quarterback hits, but how many pressures did he have? He was strong in the run game. Bosa was great. So those are your big-time players. And then the young players in the secondary stepped up. Think about this. Hufanga was out, even though I don't know how much of an impact Hufanga's ever going to have again. That sounds very negative. That's just how I feel. But Charvarius Ward was out, and when I heard Charvarius Ward was going to be out, I was concerned because he's usually always played very well against DK Metcalf, and he follows Metcalf all over the field. So I had my concerns hearing that earlier before the game, but it didn't really matter too much. When you look at Metcalf, he had a 30-yard reception on the opening drive for Seattle, and then he only had 18 yards receiving the rest of the game. It's true. When he gets frustrated in a game and he is upset, and he shows it. I'm glad he cares, but it hurts him. It does not make him better. When his emotions get the best of him and he gets frustrated, you can count on DK being out of the game practically. It really brings out the worst of him. I'm not saying he's disinterested, but he can be affected. He's somewhat, he's a sensitive player. He's not the most mentally strong player, and you get him frustrated, that will take him out of the game. Geno Smith, 30 of 52, 312 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. And the 2 picks came from Mustafa and Green, a pair of rookies. In this rookie class, those mid-round picks have played well. As you think about Pooney, Mustafa getting the interception on the opening possession for the Seahawks, and they were driving down the field good. And the Seahawks offense never really got into a rhythm again until late in the second half. They did not get into any kind of rhythm. That was late third quarter. And Green getting the interception. And this team needs some more youth. They need injection of youth because of the injuries. And some of these players have played a lot of football. I think they have good football ahead of them, Debo and Kittle, but they've got some miles on those tires. And as we've said, the injuries have really mounted up, and it was just so good to get out of this one with a win because Greenlaw being out is a huge injury. You're already without McCaffrey. You're already without Mason now. You lose Mason during this game, and then you're without your top corner, one of your top, your starting safeties in Hufanga. You're without your kicker. There's another injury, but just take the win. And overall, it was a strong win on the road. Anytime you can win by double digits on the road in a tough environment, Seattle's not what it used to be, and there's more 49er fans there, and more of a 49er fan presence there than, say, the Seahawks were in the prime Pete Carroll years. It's still not an easy place to win, and there were a lot of positives. It's a bounce back game for the offense and Brock Purdy. Deebo Samuel actually looked fast. The running game, you saw some depth there, and you're going to need it. George Kittle's looking healthier. Fred Warner looks healthy again after the injury. Young players in the secondary stepping up, and Nick Bosa playing more like the Nick Bosa we expect him to be. So those are the positives. The negatives here, and there are a number of negatives too, is, well, more special teams problems. Let's start there. Special teams problems, the kickoff return, and that's what made this game interesting, and it should have not have been. I mean, the Seahawks made this too close at the end of the game, and what got them back in the game and gave them some momentum was the kickoff return. And they scored 14 in the third quarter, and the 49ers started off with 16 points. Well, if you do the math, that's a touchdown and 3 field goals. And that's the real problem of concern, is these slow starts. They don't have a problem getting down the field, but not getting it in. If they just had one more touchdown instead of field goal, there would have been no reason to sweat. They have got to continue to work on driving the ball in, and maybe they found something with George Kittle. But they have got to get more creative, and I don't think it's giving the ball to Deebo at the goal line. So Kyle Shanahan's play calling, special teams, red zone, these continue to be the problems that keep coming up and that are not being addressed. I still have some concerns with the offensive line. The run game, the run defense was fine, but the Seahawks for the last several years, and Kenneth Walker really has never done anything against the 49ers. I had no concern about really Seattle running the ball too much. It's not really a concern because they haven't been able to do it, and because they were behind, they were throwing a lot. 52 pass attempts. 52 pass attempts. Now, I was concerned somewhat coming into this. I didn't have a lot of confidence because of the way that Cardinals game played out at the end. But the difference that we have to remember is the 49ers have the star players and the Seahawks just don't. They have DK Metcalf. Besides that, on offense, they have receivers in Smith, in Jigba, and Lockett. I mean, these are quality receivers. They have depth. The problem is they don't have the quarterback to get them the ball. Geno Smith, to me, is a quarterback. He can get you in the playoffs. You can get in as a wild card team. That's as far as you're going to go. Maybe you win one game in the playoffs. That's it. I'm surprised the Seahawks have not looked to upgrade at quarterback. And they have kept Geno Smith, but they haven't tried to upgrade through the draft, through a trade. And he's serviceable. He's a respectable quarterback. He's a professional. But you're never going to win anything with Geno Smith. You're never going to win anything with Geno Smith. And the other problem, big glaring problem for the Seahawks, is they just don't have players that are good enough in their front seven. And I know McDonald's putting in a new defense, and he was featuring a 3-4 defense. The Seahawks have a good secondary and quality players in their secondary, but they don't have it on their defensive line. They don't have it at linebacker, and that's what they need to look to improve. Quarterback, and if you don't have edge rushers, I don't care how good your secondary is, you're not going to win. If you can't get to the quarterback, you are not going to win. And you think about the Seahawks in the Legion of Boom days. Yes, their secondary was the best in the league. It was one of the great secondaries in the history of the NFL. But they had enough of a pass rush with players like Bennett and Averill, and of course they had Bobby Wagner in the middle of the field. Seahawks have nothing like that now. And it was a strange game with no Pete Carroll. And you have a much younger coach. You still have a defensive coach in Mike McDonald. But now it's a different time, and it was also unusual that we typically have later games in the season in Seattle, and the next game, which will be later in the year, will be in San Francisco. And also, since we appreciate uniforms, Seahawks, please bring back these turn-back uniforms. You didn't play great on the field, but you looked great. I am so tired of the blue uniforms, the blue helmet, blue jersey, blue pants combination. The silver helmet, it's a beautiful helmet. The blue jersey, the gray pants, and the blue socks. You have really your own unique look, and it's a strong look. Anyway, finishing up here. Now the 49ers are going to face the Chiefs. You did what you had to do. You won in Seattle, and now it's Patrick Mahomes. And he's not playing his best right now at all. He's thrown 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions on this season. I mean, in some ways, this is the time to get the Chiefs. But I still don't have a lot of confidence in the 49ers. You can beat the Seahawks. You can beat Geno Smith. You cannot have special teams blunders when you're up against it in a close game where everything matters and you cannot turn the football over more than once against the Chiefs. I mean, you do almost have to play a perfect game. You cannot shoot yourselves in the foot. And even in the 49ers wins, you still have these special teams problems. Will you have Jordan Mason? Who's going to be the kicker? And what will your secondary look like against Mahomes? And will Kyle Shanahan make the necessary adjustments to beat the Chiefs? There'll be a lot to talk about in this coming week.